Chapter 4. Even though the new school year had already started, my parents gave me a couple days to settle in before sending me off to be tortured. Desert Ridge Middle School was only a few miles from Stagecoach Pass, and my mom drove me to my first day. I sat in my seat, staring straight ahead, my heart pounding. When we turned into a parking lot of my new giant school, I thought my heart might just pound right out of my chest. My school back in Kansas only had about 300 students. Desert Ridge was no more than 3 times that size, 1,000 kids who had never seen me before. Mom drove our own clucker up to the drop-off curve behind a bunch of other cars, mostly fancy cars like BMWs, Volvos, and Jeeps, and all shiny and freshly waxed and variety of bright colors. Our can't tell what color the car didn't have a logo because it had fallen off a long time ago. Actually, I'm not sure if my parents remembered what kind of car it was. It definitely didn't fit in with the other cars. I took that as a bad sign. We waited at the line inched forward. Mom turned to me. Her lips twitched a bit as she smiled. "You want me to walk you in?" I shook my head. No. She nodded and pushed a long strand of dark hair behind her ear. "Yeah, I suppose it would be embarrassing having your mommy walk you in on your first day." "Just a little." She ran her hands down her hair and tugged tightly on the tips. "You remember where your first class is?" "Yep, no problem." "You remember where your locker is?" "All systems go." "In my brain," I said as we pushed up right in front of the curve. "Good," she said, "because I was a little worried this morning when you came out with your shirt on backwards and stuck on your cereal in the microwave." Just being an airhead, I slid my head under the strap of my bag, which wasn't exactly the truth. I was nervous. Extremely nervous. "I know how hard things have been for you, sweetheart," she said. "I'm fine, Mom. Really, I'll be okay." She leaned over and kissed the top of my head. "Call if you need anything. I'll pick you right out here after school." Normally, my parents never baby me. They're more of the kind of parents who, instead of kissing your boo-boos, tell you to walk it off and be a man. And they never have seemed to care if I'm not actually a man. But I guess today was a special occasion. Honestly, I wished she would stop. It was stressing me out even more. I nodded and opened the car door with my foot, then slid it back into my new purple ballet flat. I got out of the car, swung my bag around my side, gave my mom a reassuring smile, and slammed the door shut with my hip. Before I walked 5 steps, I got my first look. I tried to ignore it. My parents had always taught me to tackle one small goal at a time. Holding a brush between my toes, lifting the brush all the way to my head, running the brush through my hair. One small goal at a time. And so I zeroed on my first goal of the day, getting to my first class without barfing all my soggy microwave cereal. We visited the school yesterday so I could find my classes, meet some of the teachers, and talk with the people in the office. Everyone was super nice and caring, of course, but they all said the same thing so much, it started to get annoying. If there's anything you need, even, don't be afraid to ask. It's like they knew just what I was going to need a lot of help. I walked to the science room just before to avoid the other kids' stares, but also because it was still stinking hot. By the time I got to my class, sweat was already trickling down my forehead. I went straight to my seat, swung my school bag onto my desk, and slid into the strap over my head. I eased my foot out of the flat, opened the top of my bag with it, and pulled out my science book. One benefit of living in Arizona was that I could wear ballet flats, my favorite kind of shoe, year-round, not like in Kansas, where I had to wear warm boots for the winter. Everything took longer when I wore warm boots. It was so much easier to slip my foot in and out of flats. I had a pair of brown, black, rainbow-striped flowers and now purple. Flip-flops would probably have been easier, but there's a whole dust factor, and it's especially dusty in the desert. I glanced up and found Miss Hart, the science teacher, watching me. I smiled a little, and she smiled back. I had met her last night, and she seemed to have told me to let her know if I need any help. Of course, I hoped she would see me now that I didn't need extra help, as I proceeded to pull a notebook and pencil out of my bag with my foot. I took my seat and turned to the girl sitting next to me. The girl's eyes widened in obvious surprise. "Are you new?" she asked. "Yeah," I replied. "It's my first day." It stunk to start 8th grade over a month into the school year. I could tell the girl was desperately trying not to look at my non-existent arms, People were always doing that. Like, if they looked down at my torso for longer than a split second, they would turn to stone. Like my torso was actually Medusa's head. This girl was pretty, with her long, dark hair and and strappy red dress and all her body parts. I always wanted to wear a dress with skinny straps like that, but I guess I felt too self-conscious about it. The strappy dress wouldn't look the same without some nice long arms to show it off. Well, welcome. She quickly pulled out her books and started reading, surely to avoid having to talk with me anymore. I turned my attention to my own book and then looked back at the girl. What pages are we on? I asked her. 23. She reached for my book. Here, I'll help. Oh no, it's okay, I said. She stopped and pulled her hand away. I lifted my foot and opened the book pages with it, using my dexterous toes, turning the pages until I got to 23. See? I can do it. She gave a twitchy smile. How did you learn to do that? I shrugged. You'd be surprised what you can do with your feet when that's all you have. She gave me another uncomfortable smile and went off back to reading her book. She hadn't introduced herself, so I didn't either. I sometimes wonder if people had the tendency not to give me their names or ask me for mine because of the fear of getting too close to something so different. At lunchtime, I decided to sit outside on a bench to eat. I didn't want to go to the cafeteria and sit at a table by myself while everyone watched me eat with my feet. I might as well have been up on stage with the spotlights shining on me. I pulled my lunch out of my bag, but then I noticed a few kids standing around glancing at me. I knew what they were doing, waiting to watch me. Everyone was always so curious. At home in Kansas, I had been sitting at a lunch table with Emily, Kaya, Brittany, all of us laughing. Meanwhile, Booger was hanging out of Mr. Thomas's hairy nose during history class. Kayla would be tossing pretzels at me, meanwhile I would try to catch them in my mouth, and Emily would be complaining that her parents still wouldn't let her wear makeup. No one would have cared that I was eating with my feet. My stomach crammed. I stuck my lunch back into my school bag and headed for the bathroom, where I was grateful to find an automatic water and soap dispenser. In my nervousness, I had forgotten to wash my feet, which I always do before I eat. Just because I don't have arms doesn't mean I'm all gross and I want toe jam in my Cheetos. By the time I finished drying them, my stomach crammed had ease. I didn't feel hungry anymore. I went outside, found a scheduled spot under a tree, sat in the grass, and read my science book.